Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Economic Empowerment Podcast. Today, I'm here with Dominic, and can you introduce a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Dominic Vogel. I live in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and I've been in cybersecurity for almost 20 years now, and past 10 years serving as an entrepreneur and a business owner, solopreneur, and really focusing on helping small and mid-sized businesses with their cyber security.
So, what have you got into the cybersecurity field?
Gosh, that's a good question. What got me into it? Well, when I was entering university, I was trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to focus on and do. I knew I wanted to do something with technology,
Right.
and the cybersecurity, or as it was called back then, information security, was a very nascent and still very sort of new field. And I just started reading about it. I thought it was really interesting, and I just started self learning and self teaching my stuff in that field. And yeah, I've been at it ever since. My first job right at university was in cybersecurity, so I've been doing it my whole professional career.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because you're a veteran, of course, in the cybersecurity area. So, how do you think, since you entered the field, how this field has shifted throughout the years?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's Some things have changed, some things haven't. It's technology has certainly changed. When I first started, there was just a handful of security vendors out there. Now it's just cybersecurity vendors are coming out left, right, and center every single day. It's a very hot area to be having security startups, right? So that has changed considerably. There's a lot more, I'll say, mousetraps out there in terms of
Right.
companies
Yeah.
saying that they provide better security mousetraps. I think the field as a whole has evolved as well. It's gone from being a very technical discipline to being one that, albeit still has technical roots, but is now has airplay at the board level, at the executive level, right? And it's not
Right.
just about it through a technical lens. It's how do you communicate it through a risk lens, a value lens, right? Cost lens, that type of thing. So that has evolved and changed greatly since I've entered the field. I still think there's a lot of things that haven't changed. Is that there's still a whole notion of approaching this as an IT problem or a tech problem.
Right.
You just
Yeah.
still move this to it's a business problem in this day and age.
100%. So, how do you see? Because there are a lot of changes going on in the cybersecurity field, and like you mentioned, there's something that haven't changed so much. How do you think it's going to evolve in the next 10 years for the cybersecurity field?
Oh, that's a really good question. Um, I think, and not to throw a buzzword out, but AI holds great promise in terms of being able
Right.
to really help, I'll say, separate the needles and the haystacks. Because
Right.
right now you have a lot of these security systems which are creating a whole bunch of alerts, and just it's really hard to manually go through all that. Right, we're running up against a sort of a people power problem. So I think AI holds great potential in terms of being able to identify threats more proactively, to identify threats in the way that we don't require that same level of people power, and will allow security teams today to focus on much more higher value tasks rather than just sort of chasing the proverbial ghosts and trying to separate the wheat from the chaff, find the needle in the
Right.
haystack. Pick your metaphor.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And I like how you mentioned AI because that's the big buzzword thing right now. Like, cybersecurity professionals are using it to help improve the ecosystem. But also, in the meantime, hackers can also use that system to crack down the cybersecurity firewalls and stuff like that. So, how do you think that this battle is going to continue with the ethics of artificial intelligence integrating into the cybersecurity area?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And you bring up a good point there about just because the good guys can use it, the bad guys can use it just as well,
Yeah,
right? So,
right,
what we're going to see with AI is greater automation in attacks as well. Being able to create even more believable phishing attacks and things of that
right,
nature to be able to perform social engineering attacks. And we've already started to see that, right? So, I think when we're looking at the sort of the digital battlefield, so to speak, I think we're going to see that continuation of the cat and mouse game that has evolved over the past 20, 25 years, right, to create the field that is cybersecurity. Um, what I think where AI holds great promise, though, is being able to, I'll say, level the battlefield in that,
right,
right now, sort of the old adage is defenders have to be right all the time and the attacker only has to be right once. I think AI has a great opportunity to help level that field there, where we're going to be able to not always be sort of playing catch up. I think as we've been doing right now, because right now it's attacks come out, we create solutions
right,
to address those attacks. New attacks come out, old attacks no longer matter, right? So it's the
right. Yeah.
constant sort of reaction. I think AI holds great promise for us to really go to more of a proactive stance when it comes to building cyber resilience for organizations.
Right. And I like how you mentioned that cybersecurity is going to adjust their behavior. But in the meantime, like I remember talking to another cybersecurity individual about this, is that her point was basically being that the hackers are going to adjust their behavior based on how the system change. And is that a risk that can be remedied throughout, or do you think that has always going to be a problem since we're going to be in internet world more and more with the implementation of augmented reality or virtual reality, and also meta and different stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think really when I think about where we need to be moving forward, it's about creating more resilient systems, right? The fact that we still have systems that can be brought down by someone just clicking the wrong thing, that means we're creating very fragile systems, right? We need to
Exactly. Yeah.
create different levels of resiliency, higher levels of resiliency in our system, so it's not just a user issue when someone clicks something that they shouldn't, right? So I think that's what we need to keep moving in that direction, right? It can't just be on the user behavior. Don't get me wrong. I think that's important that we keep cultivating
Right.
a healthy dose of skepticism and creating secure mindsets, but it can't just rest on that, right? One person in accounts payable shouldn't be able to bring down an entire IT ecosystem.
Yeah, I don't think that should be the case because like if I just click one wrong link, my whole bank information might be stolen. And do you think right now in the cybersecurity field, it's more like an ecosystem, like people are working with each other, or do you think it's more like a point-to-point system? And do you want to see it as more collaborative, or do you want to see it as more split
Yeah,
up?
that's a good question. I think we need to keep moving into more of a ecosystem, right? Because right now you have all these different security vendors, and they don't all necessarily play well with each other. It's like, well, if you want this to play well, you have to buy all the other. Don't buy what our competitors, right? You have to buy our products, right? I think we need to move into a state where we're more collaborative, right? There needs to be security systems should be able to interplay better with one another. I think we've made strides from where that once was, but I think there's still a lot of room for growth there in order to make truly a collaborative ecosystem where it doesn't matter which brand you're using, right? Like they need to all play well together in order to get ahead of cyber adversaries.
And I think that really bounces off to another question is that, like, large firms like Palo Alto and stuff like and companies like that are potentially going to, like, as we move into a more ecosystem in the cybersecurity field, it's going to become monopolistic. And how do those small business survive within this type of competition?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think what we're seeing is a lot of these cybersecurity startups they're just creating themselves for the chance to be acquired, right? I think we're going to see a huge, and we're already seeing this massive move towards mass consolidation, where we're seeing the cyber giants get bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So I'd say over a 5-10 year horizon, right, we're gonna see I think cybersecurity startups fizzle. I'm not sure that's the right word, but maybe slow down, and we're going to see further and further mass consolidation. That's what I believe the direction we're moving in.
Do you think that's a good thing, that the consolidation of monopolistic firm? Because
Yeah.
one threat I'm thinking about is that after they attain a significant amount of the market, they have to work with Palo Alto, let's say, and they can just basically upcharge as much as they want to, like Boeing does in the
hmm
airplane business industry. So, like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah. There's pros and cons. The con of the situation we're in right now is that you have all these cybersecurity companies that just address one little problem, right? And you have
Right.
to pay an arm and a leg to do that, right? I don't think it's sustainable, right? Especially on if you are a buyer, if you're a chief information security officer for an organization, you don't want to have to buy 100 different solutions, right? So I think there are some benefits to the consolidation, but there's also some drawbacks as well, in which we see this. Like if you're all in the Microsoft ecosystem, right, you're at their mercy, right, from a billing perspective and costs, right. You don't if they say well it's going to go up, 20% or cost, well, you're not in a position to argue that, right. So,
Right.
um, I think really what we need to find is an optimum level of right, still having fewer. And I think this is a natural trajectory for any growth sector. I think we're well in that trajectory, but getting to the spot where we're having fewer and fewer, I'll say, on paper startups, which really aren't providing any value other than wanting to be acquired, and then having well positioned leaders but then still having a supportive, creative ecosystem and innovation that's constantly challenging the sleeping giants.
100%. And as an entrepreneur yourself, would you say it's the most challenging thing you have faced like during your career being an entrepreneur in the cybersecurity field?
Yeah, that's a good question. I honestly, I'd say probably this past year, right? As soon as the
Oh, really?
recession word started getting, yeah, as soon as the
I
recession
see.
word started getting thrown around, people clam up. Security spending has gone down. And I'd say that has been my hardest year
Yeah, right.
as an entrepreneur. Especially with organizations that say, "Well, we've already spent money. Maybe we're secure. We don't need to spend more money," kind of thing, right? And so I think recognizing that there were organizations that realize that, hey, even in a recession, the bad guys don't take a vacation, right? They're like, there's a recession, maybe we should stop doing attacks. If anything, attack volumes have doubled and tripled and quadrupled during
Yeah.
recession or recession-like economic time that we've experienced in the past year or so. So it seems somewhat counterintuitive, but if there's any point to be investing in cybersecurity, it's probably now.
I see. I see. Cool. And like like you're mentioning there's a recession, like how have you been adjusting to these type of challenges in the past year?
I think it's just trying to listen to your customers, right? And recognizing that, at least for for myself, trying to be saying, well, you know what? If normally you'd spend X number of dollars on security services, well, if you can't spend X, why? What are you willing to invest in terms of managing that risk? And like, well, we can do, X minus Y. Okay, well, let's pare that down then, right? So I think being
Right.
able to not just force my ways on them and trust trying to truly listen to my customers and truly understand that, yeah, they do want to keep solving the problem that is a riddle that is cybersecurity, but not able to spend what they had in years past. So I think just being an empathetic listener has certainly helped me get navigate this landscape.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with being a good listener can definitely like solve a lot of problems. And like because I know like a lot of areas retaining the talent is most important thing, and specifically in cybersecurity field is one of the most important thing because people are just looking at Silicon Valley and basically seeing who is the next guy that can pop up
Mhm.
the next ChatGPT or something like that. So how have you been retaining those talents in your efforts and stuff like that?
I think it's just creating a culture where voices get heard, people feel valued. It sounds simplistic, but just being a good person, being a good leader, and putting your people first, right? I think that to me is the key to building success. Is the key to building sustainable relationships, whether they are with people who work with you, work for you, your customers. I think when you come from that point of view and view life through a relational lens and not a transactional lens, um, that to me is what I believe in, both personally and professionally.
It's easy to say but really hard to do because especially when
Yes.
yeah like when you have like a lot of people when you have people around you and then there's also the money factor playing into it and stuff like that. I think that's just a lot of times being problematic and it's really hard to balance it out and stuff like that. And also like so what like as an entrepreneur what do you think are like basically necessary qualities for for being a successful entrepreneur?
I like that question. I'd say, for me, in this day and age, being someone who's able to see big picture. To me, the greatest entrepreneurs aren't those who seek shortcuts; they're those who seek to build processes, sustainable things that will may not show immediate benefit in the short term, but in the long run will just absolutely blossom, right? So people who are able to see that big picture, think big picture, and are patient, those to me are incredible qualities for an entrepreneur. Another one is to focus on what you do best and delegate or outsource everything else. A lot of entrepreneurs try to do everything, and when you try to do everything, you end up doing nothing. So really focus on what is the value, right? What is the thing that you love doing the most, b what's the thing that you do the best, and c what's the thing that what you do is going to move your organization, move your startup forward.
Right.
Focus on those. Everything else, hire someone, outsource, delegate internally, what have you. Right. So those to me, I really believe are the types of characteristics that will allow entrepreneurs to thrive in this day and age.
100%. And as Generation Z, Generation Alpha come into the entrepreneurship field, there's always a problem of lack of trust from investors, funders, and like other entrepreneurs from the older generation because they might, think that you're not experienced enough and you don't know what you're talking about and stuff like that. So what do you think are some ways that young people can develop skills that you can develop to gain those trust and experiences?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And uh, I think back in my days, in my early corporate days, being a millennial and having to develop, or early millennial, I should say, being able to bridge gaps with Gen X and baby boomers, right? There was mistrust issues there. I experienced that, and I to me, I think really what's important is just being able to have very open, very candid, but trusted dialogue, right? Don't come from a place of attacking someone personally. If you say, "Oh, you're a bad listener," all this, don't attack personal qualities, right? Seek common ground, right? And more often than not, you want the same things, right? But maybe you're
Right,
expressing it in different ways. Seek those common grounds, right? Find language that will allow you to build trust. Seek to build bridges, right? Seek to sow seeds of relationships. That to me, I've lived that. I believe that to be true, right? If you approach other people who may not view things the same as you, um, like I said, seek that common ground. Have those hard conversations, right? Don't attack people personally. I always say, don't attack people, attack ideas, right? When
right,
you're going
yeah,
to attack an idea, say, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And the last thing to me is empathy, right? Put yourself in someone else's shoes. Why is someone else holding that belief? If you don't believe it, try and put yourself in their shoes. Why is it that they're saying what they're saying? That will allow you to find that common ground. That will allow you to build those relationships. And all these years later, some of the best friends that I have are those that are not even in the same generation as me. Right? Some of my closest friends. Well, my closest friend is actually far closer to retirement. He's probably going to retire next year or two than I am. I have two little kids. His kids are all grown up, but he became a very close friend of mine. We are completely different. We have completely different beliefs, completely different generational aspects, but by seeking common ground and knowing that there are things that we both believe and believe to be true, build an amazing friendship, right? So be that type of person. That to me is a key to success.
right. And how did you become so open-minded? Because a lot of people get stuck on this one idea of their own belief, and it's hard to branch out and stuff like that. So how have you been this open-minded and stuff like that?
it, yeah, that's a really good question. To me, for me, becoming a dad is what really opened my mind. Right, like on my early 20s, yeah, I was closed-minded. It was my way or the highway. I was right. Everyone else was wrong. And I get that. We're allowed to be that. But as I look from it from a maturity perspective, and I remember when I held my son after he was born, I was like, you know what? I need to be able to see the world through someone else's eyes, right? And allow me to see the world through my wife's eyes, allow me to see the world through my kids' eyes, and recognizing at the end of the day how I see the world, especially as a middle-aged, privileged white man, right? That's a fairly good view. Other people don't have that same view, so I need to be able to put my shoes in other people's shoes and recognize that how I view things and see things isn't the same as everyone else, right? So I think that was being, like I said, becoming a dad was an awakening moment for me.
And last of all, what is one message that you will share to, people who are inspiring to become entrepreneurs and young generation?
To me, my message would be don't chase money, chase passion. Right? I chased money early on, especially as an entrepreneur. It led to me being burned out, frustrated, and didn't really go anywhere. So my 2.0 version was focusing on chasing what I love and forging amazing lifelong relationships. Right? I put relationships first. I'm a big person on LinkedIn. That's how we met our mutual friend Carla.
Yeah,
I'll give Carla a little shout out right now. By focusing on relationship building and focusing on trying to just be of service and be of value to other people
right.
has created unknown riches to me that I never thought possible in many ways,
100.
not just financial. So don't chase money, chase passion, and chase meaningful friendships.
Thank you so much for accepting this interview. And yeah, I wish you the best next year and for your company and stuff like that.
Thank you,
Thank you.
George. Thank you for being
Thank
a
you.
great life for the next generation. I appreciate people like you.
Thank you.